So the crucial question for this research project was, why does priority implementation work in some cities, like Zurich and Curitiba, but why is it a bit harder here in Melbourne and Toronto and other places that are a bit more car-centric? And the approach we took was a case study approach. So take some general theory from public policy analysis and legitimacy theory, the sort of things that engineers don't generally use, but the theory exists. Get out and have a look at some of the cases and then generate some theory. So specifically we looked at transit-centric cities such as Zurich and Curitiba, where a lot of people are using transit, and then places like Melbourne and Toronto, where it's a little bit more car-dominated. And we also looked at, a range of success and not so much success. So, Melbourne, we've had mixed success sometimes, and sometimes it's been removed. Toronto, the same, sometimes plans have been cancelled, but sometimes things have gone ahead. Whereas Zurich and Curitiba, generally speaking, it's been quite successful, and they've been building and building and building. The key thing that's come out of this first question is this new framework, which is the contribution to research. So I'll just explain that a little bit to you. The key thing in this framework is that the answer is legitimacy. That's why transit priority is successful in some cities and not in others. What's legitimacy about? It's about conformity. It's about the ability to defend something, and it's this feeling of it being valid. It's not necessarily that it meets the law, it's just that it can be defended. So the new framework looks a bit like this. We've got the amount of transit priority that's legitimate on the x-axis and the amount of transit priority that is actually out there on the line. And this line here is where the amount that's legitimate is the amount that you actually have. So obviously we have the status quo is pretty legitimate, that's where we are at the moment. No one really wants to change anything, that sounds legitimate to me. But there might be an increase in the amount of transit priority that's legitimate. Say, I write this amazing report that says we should definitely have a new transit priority piece of implementation. It's going to increase the legitimacy, increase the amount of transit priority that's legitimate. And this happened in Toronto. They did this St. Clair Avenue West transit project. They got a lovely report that supported this project. They got the go-ahead. They started to construct it. And then there was a court injunction, and then there was a big, huge court battle, and then they finally managed, 5 years later, to finish the construction. And so after that, you've moved from here to a position where you've actually built it now. So the actual amount of transit priority has increased. And there it is. Looks pretty good. So what else could happen? We could, again, have this transport plan that increases the amount of transit priority that's legitimate. That sounds pretty good. And then, we just elected Mayor Rob Ford, and looks like it's not going to go too well. He said, let's move all the transit underground. And we've ended up in a compromise situation, where we haven't got everything that we wanted in the plan, but we are going ahead with the Eglinton Underground. So we are getting at least some of it. The other option is that we might, have this wonderful plan that says, TTC staff have identified all these places where, we should definitely put in some queue-jump lanes and it will really improve things, increasing the legitimacy of queue-jump lanes. But unfortunately, the city planning people aren't all that keen on it, and so they're resisting it because of impacts that it'll have on pedestrian, cyclists, streetscape, and all that sort of stuff. And here we are, 3 or 4 years later, and now there's a criteria for evaluating requests, and it's all quite big. There's still no actual queue-jump lanes on the ground in Toronto. So we've had challenge and inaction, for generally speaking, so far. What's the other way that we could do this? So that's sort of how we are looking at it from this perspective. We increase the amount of that's legitimate, and then we either build it, we get some sort of compromise, or nothing happens. The other way we might look at this is we might just go out and build it first. Don't bother too much about building the legitimacy, just go out and build it. So that's essentially what happened on King Street. They had a pilot. They just went out and said, we're going to do this for a year, and then we're going to see if it works or not. So they had a pilot. They did a whole load of reporting. All the reporting and all the data collection during the pilot said, this thing's fantastic. Everybody got behind the idea of it. And so we built it, and then the legitimacy increased. And we're back to the sort of situation where it's going to be stable again. Clarendon Street, again, we built a trial, and then there was difficulties and challenges, and it looks like all of the trial that we built wasn't legitimate, and so there was a compromise, and some of the measures stayed, and some of them didn't. Here we are in Stud Road, so we went out and built it, and everybody was very, very angry, and then it got removed after the next election. So again, we built it, it didn't get any legitimacy, so it's gone. That's basically the framework.